Hello, I'm here by the sea. Good morning, it's April 3rd here in beautiful spring Nova Scotia, and then today I'm going to plant some squash in my tulip garden. Hi, it's Greg Otten here with MaritimeGardening.com. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com. I thought I'd take a quick walk through the garden to show you what's going on. There isn't much going on right now, but I just thought I'd walk you through just to explain what I've done, what I haven't done, where I am at this point in the year. I'm approaching the middle of December. It's about a week from the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. And I just thought I'd show you where I am in terms of preparing this Zone 6A garden for Zone 6A no-till garden for next year. Everything is in an optimal state, but I have never had a year where I couldn't say that. You never get everything done that you'd like to get done. But you set a goal and you try to reach it, and wherever you get further than if you hadn't set a goal in the first place, right? So come along with me and have a little look around. Alright, so here we are at the beginning. I had to do a voiceover for this because I'm still figuring out the audio in my new camera. Anyway, we persevere. So the compost bin gardens are, well, not a lot going on there. I warehousing some bags of leaves there. I've covered the entire bed where the parsnips were with leaves. I've left a few parsnips in the ground to go to seed next year. They're covered in leaves. We've had a number of evenings where it's been minus 10, maybe even close to minus 20 with the wind chill. I did a little test with that stick I just picked up to see if the ground was frozen underneath the leaves, because the ground everywhere else, so all the walking paths in the garden are ice right now. So a test in that bed showed that it really wasn't frozen. I'm reorganizing, redesigning the garden to use this sort of keyhole approach. That's where you've basically got like a bed and then a little divot in between two beds. That way you can get in between the two beds and access the soil. I've got a video that I did very recently where I think I called it "You Don't Need to Buy Soil," or that was something like that. The title of that video, where I showed you how I'm building the soil in these beds, digging a trench down the center and throwing some rotten logs down the middle, and using a general hugelkultur approach. But I'm pretty much out of time this season for doing work like that. The soil is frozen, and we've had the odd warm day, but it's just not enough to thaw the soil out. So I'm pretty much done doing work like this in my garden. I got big plans to do a major redesign down my garden, but that whole area there is going to be redesigned to have these gardens like that box I was just looking at. But I'm just out of time. It's winter time. Everything's cold, and there's just no more time. These beds, I've got these domes over, and I got some plastic over to keep the soil from freezing. Unless one way to keep the soil from freezing is to put like 2 feet of some sort of detritus over top, leaves or hay or something. Another way to keep the soil from freezing is to use plastic like this. And not only will it keep the soil from freezing, but it'll warm up on any day when there's a bit of sun, and it'll actually get the soil organisms, worms and things like that, active even in late January, February, and that sort of thing. And just get those organisms working, breaking things down, and enhancing your soil. So it's just my way of avoiding having to bring in new inputs. All I do is put some leaves down, or some hay down, or some grass clippings, or some whatever I can get my hands on that's organic, that will break down, that worms like to eat. And you put the plastic over top, and that just gets all those organisms working away, and they're doing all the work in terms of getting your soil ready for next year, right? They're leaving a layer of you know, the decaying material goes into those organisms, and then stuff comes out the other end of those organisms, and that stuff is left on your soil, and that is the compost, fertilizer, etc., etc., that will get your garden going next year. And that way you don't have to bring in chicken manure and cow manure and goat manure and all that sort of stuff, because you've got worm manure, the best manure there is. And every time it rains, you know, a lot of that manure will be on the surface, some will be on those tunnels the worms make, but every time it rains, the rain will drag that material down into your soil, and all the little tunnels left by the worms and other various organisms that are working in there will give a pathway for those nutrients to get down into your soil. I got a bed here where I took the last of my kale out of the garden. There's still some kale stumps in the garden. I didn't get them all out. Now the soil is frozen, and it's just going to stay like that until next spring when the soil thaws out at some point in time. Hopefully that's in the middle of April, maybe in May, who knows. You just never know what kind of spring you're going to get. But that's just one. I had two beds there, that one with the grass and the one just beyond it with the leaves. They were both kale beds, and the leaf one is the one I harvested everything from first. So I got all the kale stumps out of that one. I didn't get them all out of the grassy one. So there's still some of those there, and that's fine. And you know, who knows, maybe one of those will survive the winter and come back and turn into a big kale plant with seeds and stuff like that. You just never know what's going to happen. So that's where we are with that. The kale is done. I've harvested all the kale, I've eaten all the kale, and I've got a lot of it frozen in the ground, and we're on to next year. What else? I managed to get, I did a video where I talked about making the compost tent, leaves and straw and seaweed, whatever you can get your hands on. You put paper over the top of it. I've got this theory that it's, especially if you make it like a dome, it'll sort of hold the heat that's in the ground. I did 2 more beds that way before things got frozen. I mean, you got to think about the ground. The ground is, we think of the ground as cold, but the ground's actually warm, right? Especially when the air becomes -5, -10, -20, right? You go down into the ground, it actually gets warm in the ground. You go down deep enough, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. If you've ever been down in a mine, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer the further down you go. So the ground has heat, and when you put a heavy mulch over the ground, it holds some of that heat in, insulates the ground from the cold in the air. If you have enough of it, the ground won't freeze. And there's ways to take advantage of that sort of effect. And this is a kind of an experiment here, but the idea is if you put mulch down and then you put cardboard or paper, this is that leaf bag paper, you put that over the mulch, it'll sort of hold that in and keep it from freezing. So we'll follow up on this, and around I'd say late January, which is pretty much the coldest it gets here. That's the peak of the coldness. I'll see if the ground is frozen in those beds. I mean, in late January, all the ground is frozen here. It's frozen like ice. We get a lot of rain and snow and melt and thaw and freeze and thaw and snow and thaw and melt and rain and thaw and freeze and snow. We get all this sort of weird effects all winter long because we're coastal. So despite the fact that, like, on a day like this where it looks like in my garden it's really not winter yet, but you can have a day like this where it looks like this but it's -17 because it, you know, maybe we got a major snow and then it rained and all the snow disappeared, then it got super cold. Even as I make this voiceover right now, outside right now, so this was recorded on the weekend, like 5 days ago, but and there's no snow on the ground. But as I record this right now, Wednesday evening, what is it, December 19th, everything's covered in snow. I had to shovel the driveway this morning to go to work. Yesterday was a snowstorm and all the schools were canceled. And as far as I understand it, within 2 or 3 days all the snow will be melted and gone. and who knows what'll happen. Anyway, my point is that it's sort of bizarre conditions here, but the end result of that, especially as you move into January, I'm in Zone 6A, but that doesn't really mean much. And I'm speaking to the climatic conditions where I live, the sort of coastal peninsula Nova Scotia. The ground freezes. So by the end of January, all the ground will be frozen. Everything will be frozen. But some of these places where I've used mulches and different sorts of things, they'll be at varying degrees of being frozen. And certainly the places where I've got those plastic domes, the ground won't be frozen there. And the places where I've got those plastic flat rectangles, the ground won't be frozen there. Where I've got a really heavy mulch, the ground will not be frozen. Or it'll be only partially frozen. And my theories are where I've built those compost paper dome tent things won't be quite so frozen. I've got all my strawberry beds mulch and all that's sort of done. There's a horse stable just down the road where I can get mulch, and that's all done. And here's the cold frames, and the plants are alive in there. I'm gonna doing an experiment in these cold frames where I'm I think the one in the middle, so this is the one on the far left, I pulled everything I could out of there to make a meal, just to see how much growth occurs in them over the course of the winter. If you've been following along my channel, I think you're quite aware that the idea of winter gardening, the idea of, at least for where I am, where we have a lot of fog, so yeah, there was a middle garden there where I did a harvest, would have been 2 weekends ago. There's been no perceptible growth since then, so it would have been a week ago from when I actually did this filming here. So there's really not a lot of development. This is the other bed here where I've got some more. This is spinach that I sowed here. I sowed this spinach over 2 months ago in October, right? It's past mid-December right now. I sowed this spinach over 2 months ago, and what is it, like 1 inch high, 2 inches high? There is not a lot going on here with the spinach. So my whole point of doing this is to show people, I'm not trying to be a downer here, but depending on where you live and how much light there is and all that sort of stuff, the idea of having a cold frame to have some sort of winter garden, to do some sort of year-round garden type thing, your energy may be better spent trying to grow as much as you can in the summer months when everything's working with you, than to try to drag a little bit of growth out of the winter months when there's no light and you're everything's working against you. Why fight it? Why not just grow as much as you can when things are working well? Alright, so that's the garden tour. Hope that gave you some ideas. Alright, so that's where we are right now, here coming on to the middle of December and about a week away from the winter solstice. There's still lots of things you can do outside. You don't have to shut down your garden season. I really don't. If you've been watching my channel, I kind of keep finding things. I never seem to run out of things to do. If I'm not actually working in the garden because the soil is frozen, I'm gathering materials, I'm planting some other thing, I'm getting something together, I'm building something, right? There's always something you can do if you keep your mind on the problem and you're just incrementally working towards, at least I seem to be always working towards a bigger, better garden so I can grow as much food as I possibly can in my backyard using the land that I have bought and pay property taxes on. Why let that land go to waste, right? Why not put a little bit of your time, cancel the gym membership and put your energy into your land and see what kind of delicious, healthy, organic food you can get coming out of it. So I hope you found that interesting, and thank you so much for following along and staying with me and watching my videos. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden.